In this video, we're going to talk about LensBlur filter, and this image here will kind of show you sort of a before and after, and then we'll break it down. So here we are, and this is an original image, and you'll see that the white flower here is kind of in the middle. So let's think of that as being the critical plane of focus, or the area that should have the most detail and sharpness. So with LensBlur, we can mimic what shallow depth of field would do to an image, and we can make it happen here where we put areas in front of that object and also behind that object out of focus, just like a lens would. Now we can do it with other things as well too, but this is kind of the traditional way. So we start here, the original shot, and then the computer does this. So now we're going to switch over, and there's a handout that kind of goes with this image here, and this is sort of the start image. So nothing's been done yet to this image, so we'll have a chance to do it from the very beginning. First thing I'm going to do is duplicate this layer. So Command J is one way I can do that. And I'll just call this lens blur so that you can see which layer it's going to happen to. Now, the majority of the work happens in channels. So here we go. We're going to click on channels. We see our red, green, and blue channel. Now, before I totally begin here, you would probably want to put a guide so that you can kind of see things. Now, if you have your ruler showing, that's one way you can make a guide. But let me click on view here. You'll see that you can go new guide, that'll create a guide, or you can do show, and then you can show guides. If you have rulers checked here, then the way I like to do is just click in the ruler, and then you bring down a guide. So I'm going to put it about here in the middle of the flower, because that's where my critical plane of focus is. And in a moment here, it's going to make sense. I had done one, so you saw a second one show up. And Command H will hide or show the guides. So when I'm doing this, the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a new channel. So I click on this new button here, and it makes a new channel called Alpha 1. For purposes of the tutorial and the handout, I'll call this step 1. And then what I'm going to do is go over to the gradient tool in the toolbox, and I'm going to use a reflected gradient, and I'm going to have it go kind of black to white. So black is on top, white is on bottom. So here we go. If I click and I just kind of turn, you get kind of weird shapes. If I hold it down and I go far, you get a very gradual. If you click and you just go a little bit, you get it very strong. So if you want to make it so that it's kind of straight, hold down the shift key, click and drag, and then get somewhere like this. The more black, the more area of focus, and the more gradual change, the less shallow depth of field it will look, and the more gradual it will be. For purpose of this tutorial, so you can really see, I'm going to do something like that, and that way you can really see what happens with shallow depth of field kind of look, since LensBlur is to mimic that. So that's our step 1. Now, I'm going to turn off this eye once I get another channel here by clicking on it. And I want to isolate the flower. So here's the blue channel, here's the green, here's the red. It just so happens in this image, the blue channel, the white stands out the most compared to the surroundings, which are darker, and that's going to make it easier to work with. So I'm going to duplicate this. I can right click and go duplicate channel, and that helps. I'm going to call this step 2. And we can kind of see how this will work here with step 2. And I really want to make this really show up different. I'm going to go Command H and just hide that guide for now. I don't need it currently. So one of the ways I can do this is a destructive technique by altering the image levels. So if I click on image at the top, and then I go down to adjustments, I can mess with this here. First I got to turn on the eye though, sorry about that. So I'll just have one eye on the step 2, now it's activated. So image adjustments, and I'm going to go down to levels, and I'm going to compress this to get rid of midtones. So I'm going to go as far left as I can before I lose separation. So I'm looking kind of in this area. As long as I can get an edge in that area, that's fine. About 165 seems to be working. I'm going to go black. As long as I can keep those edges all around, I'll keep pushing and pushing and pushing. At some point, if I lose the edges, then I know I've gone too far. So I'm kind of watching. That's about good for this image here. So I'll click OK. Now I need to isolate it even more, and I want the flower to be all white and everything else black. So let's concentrate on making the flower white. So I zoomed in to make it a little bit easier. And you can try different selection tools. I know from past experience that quick select works okay in this image here. So I'm going to click the white, and it did a pretty good job. There's a little bit of weirdness right here where it didn't do so well. So I might go ahead and try auto enhance, and if it didn't work, let me shrink it down and I'll try, and I got this little bit of part in here. I'm going to hold down the option key and hit a minus and try to get rid of that part there, but then I'll plus to get part in, so I got to kind of know how this tool works. So I'm going to add to it as much as I can. That did a pretty good job. So if I've got that selection working pretty good, then what I can do here is try to work it with some burn and dodge tools. Now you could maybe do this without the selection as well too, but I'm going to start by dodging, and I am just lightening. Midtones is going to work on these slightly less intense areas. If I switch it to shadows, and get some of these other areas that might be there. I'm going to go and deselect, Command D, so I can get a little bit more into this. Be careful about where you can see through the flower. So if at the top I can see through, I don't want to block that out. Now, if it works for you, there's other things you could do too. I accidentally clicked on the wrong tool. You could, excuse me, I'm using my dodge tool. You could also try painting white, but sometimes this makes it easier so that you don't accidentally hit, like, say, the surrounding area. But in the end, if you find that brush with white works best, go ahead and paint that in. Just be careful about the overall shape. Now, in a moment here, I'm going to really simplify this down, so I'm not so worried about hitting every little edge. So if I feel like I got most of it, I'll try quick select again and see how good my overall shape is. Now, if I find that there's some issues, I might want to refine my selection. So if I go select and mask, this is one place where I can kind of work on that. So I might want to show the edge, or I might want to change this to the overlay so you can kind of see there's some areas outside of the white that are currently selected. That's probably going to help me a lot on this one. Try edge detection and see if it seems to help. Sometimes you might want to smooth it just a little bit. Be careful about feather. Now, there might be some things I want to do here, like for example, if I wanted to go ahead and if I wanted to minus from the selection, I can grab this tool here. Oops. So I can kind of hit those areas that I might want to minus. And then I can flip to the plus. And I can hit areas that I might want to plus. If I'm having a little bit of problem with edge detection, I'll do the refine edge tool. Let's see how well that works. That was working pretty good. working great actually. Cool. That's been a huge help. So play with this as much as you need to and then click OK. That really improved my selection. So I'm just going to go Edit, Fill. I'm going to fill white. And that really took care of those areas. Now I'm going to go Select. I'm going to inverse the selection, and that's going to get everything outside. So let me show you here, and then I'll go Edit, Fill. We'll do black. So my goal in the end is I want black everywhere but the flower, and the flower should just be white. So you really want to double check and make sure you got it correct. If you're not sure about anything, you could, like I got a little spot over here, I think I want to just kind of get in here a little bit. That's my main only issue. Maybe right here too. So now there's a bit of a step pattern. So what I would suggest if you have that is possibly do a tiny bit of a blur. So I'll go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And probably even 1 is a little bit extreme, so I might try like 0.5, just enough to smooth out that step edge. And I've got that there. So I could combine step 2 and step 1 together, but for purposes of tutorial, let me show you how this can work to combine them together. So first I got step 1. I'm going to duplicate that. I'll call this step 3. And then I'm going to go to step 2. If I hold on the command key and click on it, it activates the white area. I go to step 3, and I'm going to go Edit, Fill, Black. Now you can see it on top like so. And you can see that we've got kind of the shape of the flower with the blur line kind of with it. So that kind of helps out a lot. So now I'm done the hard work and I'm ready just to apply the filter. Click on RGB so I can see it in color. Alright, now we're going to apply LensBlur. So I'm going to go up to Filter, Blur, LensBlur. And at this point here, my source is going to be my step 3. And I'll make this a little bigger for you. And so it's all about the quality of your mask. So if your mask is really good, your edges are going to be really good here. If your mask isn't good, then you may have to go back and tweak it. There's some things that we can do to bring it back if necessary, but we really want to make sure that the blur comes up to the flower. So take some time and make sure your mask looks really good, especially in like these areas right in here. Make sure none of the stuff is blurry that shouldn't be, and things that need to be blurry are. So just double check all that, especially like where tips come together, things like that. That's a really good place to check out. So blur focal distance, if you've done the masking the way I have, will be all the way left 1. If you're doing it without this, you may have to play around. So if it looks the opposite, just invert, you get the opposite. And then the shape, you can change all these different versions here. And see, you're probably not going to see it unless you really look up close in the blurry area. Radius is just kind of be the strength of the blur even more, but again, your masking really kind of did most of the work here. The curvature, you can play around, see if you see a difference. It kind of mimics different apertures. Same with the rotation. Specular highlight brightness will only work in areas that you have a highlight in a blurry area. I don't really have that so strong, but it allows the blur to come through, so you could increase it if you have something in there. Threshold is sort of a fine tune of that. Noise, I always recommend 1 or more. You want to try to match the noise between the non-blurry and the blurry. So if you got higher in noise, you may need to go 2 or 3, and you want Gaussian monochromatic. And then when it's done, you'll have it like so, and it should look like a photorealistic blur.